Welcome to Bring Out Your Badass Self, a movement to break your negative thoughts and habits and instead focus on building each other up and encouraging fearless authenticity.
Each week, we will get vulnerable and share experiences alongside our guests and audience. Come rediscover your inner badass self.
Good morning, fellow badasses. Welcome to BOYBAS, and I'm excited about today's topic where we're going to be talking with Rick Julian, and we're going to be talking about a very interesting topic today. But before we get in there, I do want to hear from you, want to hear your hellos, see that you're out there, and maybe just tell you a little bit about my week first. And so this week for me has been a little bit draining. I don't know if you can hear, but I'm getting over a cold. So I had an amazing weekend last week. So my bonus daughter got married, and it was the most beautiful wedding out in California at Glacier Point. And just the wedding itself and the backdrop was just amazing. As we were heading up the hill to go to her wedding, we had sleet just start coming down. Sleet. Here we are in October, and it's sleeting, and we're like, okay, we visualized it. And we're like, we're going to see blue just pop through this cloud. And what do you know? They were doing it at the same time, apparently. All of a sudden, we started to see this blue pop through the cloud. And once we got all the way up to the top, all of a sudden, it became an amazing, beautiful blue day, just blue skies with beautiful white clouds, and everything just cleared up. And they had the most beautiful wedding. It couldn't have been any more perfect. And it was just an amazing feeling. Unfortunately, I then got sick soon after. I felt sick at the end of the trip. Came back, had some stuffiness. Coming back in flight with my ears was always an interesting situation because you can't hear yourself and you're like, can you hear me? And I can't hear my family as we're landing. So I've been getting over that and just feeling a little bit drained. And as I mentioned, we had some chaos with adding in carpet and getting everything back together. But you know, one of the things that is also amazing is that the steps that we take to reduce not only the physical chaos, but also the mental chaos that sometimes we feel with the uneasiness of things not being back to normal. And the other day, I had lots of things in my life that were it just felt chaotic. Like not only was my environment still chaotic, but just so many other aspects were chaotic. And so the other day I tapped into something, and it's one of the things that I'm continuing to do more and more. And I sat that morning and I meditated, and I sat there and I released all of the things that I couldn't do anything about to the universe. And I sat with myself and I understood and acknowledged the things that I had contributed to the situations that I was dealing with. And I also recognized within myself the things that I also was being in alignment with myself and feeling the energy that we're going to be talking about today, feeling the masculine and feminine energy of taking action, as well as sometimes sitting back and releasing. And it was in that moment that all of a sudden the next day, everything changed. It was a pretty amazing feeling to just have all of the chaos that was going on in my life all of a sudden take an immediate turn the next day. And it was one of those things that just reminds you that you do have the power to be able to sit in the moment and deal with the situations that you're dealing with. And if you just take time to really think about what it is you want in your life, that those things can switch and things can continue to see like that blue popping out in the sky, finding that beautiful moment in your life amongst the chaos that was originally happening. So weird. I didn't plan any of that conversation today or the things that I just told you, and they all just sort of played into each other, and I didn't even realize it until I got to the very end. So sometimes things are just very organic in life, and sometimes it's just taking that moment to deal with the things that are uncomfortable and realizing that things can also become very beautiful if you just take the time to be able to acknowledge what it is you can control and what it is you can't. So I see several people jumping on. Let's say hello. We have Carmen saying, good morning, my favorite beautiful badass. Good morning to you, badass. Happy Friday. Let's go. Love you. I love you too. Thank you so much for joining us. We have J-Ro, Jennifer joining us. Good morning, badass. The wedding sounds amazing. You described it so well. I can imagine myself there. Gorgeous. I'm on listening while working. Have a great show and weekend. Thank you, J-Ro. It's so good to see you. And continuing to send great energy your way as you're dealing with the chaos within your life. And I see that blue coming for you as well. Kim saying good morning and happy Friday to a badass chica. And so I love you, Kim. Thank you so much for joining us. And I hope you have an amazing weekend as well. Nick is joining us. She says, top of the morning to you all. Top of the morning to you, Nick. So glad that you're here. We also have Lisa joining us saying, good morning, badasses. Back at ya, Lisa. We also have Eric with our favorite good badass morning. So it's great to see you here, Eric. And I love seeing your message every time you come through. Brent, it's amazing to see you too. He says, good morning. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation today. So for those that don't know, Brent focuses on emotional intelligence in the construction industry. And Brent, I think you will enjoy today's conversation. And J-Ro also says, thank you. I'm ready for the blue too. So thank you so much. All right, well, let's do this. Let's go over a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. It's going to be very organic, but we also have some specific things that we think we're going to talk about today with Rick Julian. So we're going to be talking about the law of genders and how the archetypical masculine and feminine energies cultivate that deeper connection and also create an unforgettable brand presence. And we're also going to dive into how they resonate with different industries and the impact on the creative process. We're also going to dive a little into the AI side of the house and how gender and energy and the human subtleties impact this increasingly automated world. And we're also going to discuss how societal expectations shape both personal and professional identities. And so let's jump in. Let me bring Rick on. Give me 1 second and let me make sure that he is unmuted.
Hello.
Welcome, Rick.
Good morning. Good morning. Great to see you, Sarah.
It's amazing to have you. And so I think it also is important. I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction to you, but I've known Rick for a couple decades now.
Yeah.
And so Rick is, just an amazing person from a friend side of the house, but also a professional that I have also worked with. And so let me give an official introduction to you, and then we can get into it a little bit more. And so for over 20 years, Rick has been the quiet architect behind brands that resonate on a global scale. He is the founder and CEO of do you still call it QV agency?
Vadis was a little bit rich for some folks, so QV it is.
Yep, QV agency. And so he has built conscious, confident, and unforgettable brands, helping some of the world's greatest companies generate more than $2 billion in new revenue. He is also the author of The Way, a modern Te Ta Ching. Is that right?
Dao Te Ching, Dao Te Ching.
Perfect. And I'm
Yeah.
going to put that link out there as well.
Thank you.
Today, Rick is also spearheading Therapist GPS. It's a vertical SaaS platform designed specifically for private practice therapists. And he is combining HIPAA safe infrastructure with that seamless Google Workspace integration, along with AI driven marketing systems. And Therapist GPS empowers clinicians to grow their practices sustainably while keeping client care front and center. And he has worked with some of the most prestigious brands that you know out there, everyone from AT&T, Coca-Cola, the Olympics, things like that, and Full Sail Partners, which is the company that I'm a part of. And so Rick was that person that I went to when we were branding back in 2012 that helped to be able to set the company that I'm a part of. And so, Rick, with that, I want to just officially welcome you.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm so excited about discussing. You and I have had really fascinating conversations over the years. We often have to, get ourselves off the phone to get back to work. But this is one of those things that we've touched on in the past, and I'm really looking forward to exploring how this comes alive in branding and helping us create more effective presences that drive more revenue and more memorable brands.
I love it. Well, let me do this. I want to set a little bit of the stage. Last week, we spoke about what the law of gender is. And today, we want to discuss how these archetypal energies have shown up in our lives and also in the, excuse me, still struggling, also in the work that we do. And so just to do a little bit more of a recap of last week to sort of set the tone, the law of gender relates to the idea of that yin and the yang, as stating both the masculine and feminine energies exist in everything. And the law states that we have the potential to express both feminine and masculine energy, and both can be found within us regardless of our sex. And we discussed also some misconceptions that masculine is not about men and feminine is not about women, but everyone has both. And that additionally, feminine isn't about weak and masculine isn't about dominant, but they have power and they also have a shadow side. And it isn't about balance where you have to be 50-50 all the time in these energies. And so as we talk further today, I want to make it clear that that isn't what, today's conversation is about, but it's rather about how brands and our perceptions are impacted by the masculine and feminine energy. So for example, taking action represents that masculine energy, while trusting and receiving represents the feminine energy. And so we discussed how people can draw upon both that masculine and feminine energy to serve us best. And when I started to think about what you do, Rick, related to creating brands and content, I was curious how that might show up in the creative process. And that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. Yeah. And so everything from like color palette to word choice to font style to tone or storytelling can really represent a mix of those energies. And so from the perspective of the law of genders, how might these archetypical masculine and feminine energies help us connect more deeply with our audience and also create a truly unforgettable presence?
Yeah, so great question. I think that a lot of it starts at some of the foundational perspectives that we take about branding. And that is that we want to resonate with our ideal customer. And we want to have not only a relevance to them in terms of solving a problem or a need that they have, but we want to build a relational, we have an emotional association with our brand. And the deeper that emotional relationship goes, the more durable that relationship can become. So if we stay at the surface of just features and benefits, that's one thing. Mm-hmm. If we put the features and benefits in the context of satisfying a goal that you have as a human, of the kind of person and way you want to move through the world, and that the brand becomes an ally and an asset to you achieving that desired state, then you are going to have a really powerful relationship. So if we are selling pickup trucks, and we want to know who our primary audience is, well, those are fairly straightforward kinds of research questions that can be answered. And then once I know that a man is going to be my primary decision maker, then I want to know, what are his drivers? What are the things that he wants this truck to represent functionally for him? I got to haul stuff from point A to point B. It needs to perform these tasks. But when I pull up on a site, what does me being in that particular brand say about me? And if that brand has activated and championed components of his self-identity as a man, his toughness, his durability, his reliability, his ability to deliver on all those archetypal things that men feel very, very deeply, women too, but we're talking in broad gender. The more you are aligned and show him that your brand is meeting him at that deeper masculine level, the more bound he is going to be to you. And it works just the other way. You could be Dove soap and it gets you clean, right? That's one at functional level. But at the point that I activate and champion your femininity as a power that is valuable and helps move the world, then I've tapped into some deeper layers of meaning with you as a woman and your associations with how you want to be in the world. So again, we've gone from just being a cleaner of skin to something that helps you express your power as a woman in the world. And so that's kind of the way we get started in beginning to leverage these associations.
Yeah. And when I think about Dove, one of the things that I love the most about that particular brand, it really resonates with me because it's about being who you are. It doesn't matter, what shape or size that you are. It's about embracing and caressing the feeling. So you think about the soap caressing you, but enjoying and being who it is that you are. No matter what size or shape or color, you are, it's about just embracing who you are.
Yes. And the very gesture of acceptance is a very feminine thing, right? It is the door is open to lots of kinds of expression, versus we are going to have a very narrow, is my dog being, sorry, let me close the door.
No worries.
I had her outside.
Wanted to make the presence.
So I think just the very act of activating that as a branding message was a feminine gesture. So I think they really operated on a lot of levels. And by doing that, they had an enormous impact across the whole landscape of branding. They gave people permission to, that opened up a whole, from runways from Milan to Paris to New York. All of a sudden, we're starting to see different shapes and of people because of that assertion of this more feminine principle with the Dove brand. So very, very powerful thing.
Yeah. And I can imagine that by consciously blending also the masculine and feminine energies in these different areas, that you can really craft a brand that not only stands out, but also sort of forges deeper and lasting connections with your audience. And so I started to think through some of the things related to like the feminine and masculine energy as well. And so when I think about masculine traits, I think about boldness, action-oriented or assertive, where feminine is masculine or as empathy and collaboration and nurturing. And I can see those showing up in different ways through like the storytelling or the tone of the voice or even the colors or maybe even the content format as well, in how it is that information is delivered as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that there are lots of ways to exemplify, these principles that we're discussing, being more communicative. I mean, one of the things that I'm constantly recommending to my clients, this would be particularly someone like you who is very communicative and comfortable on camera. In a world of AI where we are trying to get it into just, and just create a data, structured data plays for showing up in search, and we're really relying on all of this, large, the language models for recommendations and how to say things. One of the most primal things that we can do to create connection with our audiences is to be vulnerable and human and raw and imperfect. I think that one of the things that we're going to see moving forward, and we always see this, the perfection of CDs led to people fetishizing the analog, the scratches and the pops and the clicks. There was something comforting about that. And I think we're going to have a return to this authentic expression of ourselves, our relative masculine and feminine, whatever that rich blend is, that we present it with our human voices, our presence. And that's going to be part of the antidote to, I think, the sterility of the AI work, which I think, because it isn't an emotional, sentient being, it cannot resonate with this. It cannot feel. So, for example, in your opening, one of the things I think your opening was a perfect exemplification of the rich tapestry of mixing genders. So you, Sarah, arrived as a very thoughtful, collaborative person. That feminine energy is very clear and present. Yet the music that we opened up with, very aggressive, assertive. So I love the richness of that. And for your brand, your ability to operate and straddle both of those things, activating your masculine when it's necessary and appropriate, going into the more feminine as needed, gives you a latitude and a spectrum of being interact with a whole range of clients, a whole range of other brands. That's fluency, that gender fluency that you have, knowing when to tap into the more masculine. And brands need that. They need that sophistication, and knowing that the more rich you are and the more nuanced you are, the more interesting you become. And if you just stay on one side of rah, 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 or on the other side of but when we combine those things, then we get really rich.
I love that. I mean, it was interesting when we were doing the branding for BOYBAS. I think about, in a lot of ways, it is masculine because it's like boldness. Like, we're using the word badass.
Mm-hmm.
We're bold in the topics that we're talking about, but then we're talking about vulnerability. And I've sort of tried to flip the switch in some ways. Vulnerability is more like the feminine, but to me, it's also the masculine, because it takes a lot of courage to be really vulnerable. And so I've really played, for me, like badass is, you think about people in like leather jackets and on their Harley or things like that, where I'm trying to flip the script of that badass is also about tapping into that feminine side and doing things that are uncomfortable, that a lot of times people won't talk about the emotional side of the house or their personal experience and get real deep. So for me, it balances both the feminine and the masculine side. And even when we look at the colors, like, I didn't think that we were going to end with pink and purple. I'm going to be honest. I thought, I was thinking it was going to be more like bold, colors, and they are, but they fall, I think, more into the feminine aspect.
Yeah. It's I think, let's zoom out. I think one of the things that will be very helpful to people to understand kind of the biggest idea of what we're talking about is to visualize. Most people have seen the Tao symbol, right? It's a circle, and it's got half of it is black, half of it is white. The black is typically called the yang or the yang side. The yin is the yin, is the dark, and the yang is the white. And so that's the masculine and the feminine working together as a unified whole. But it isn't just black on one side and white on the other side. Within the white side, there's a little bit of black. And within the black side, there's a little dot of white. When we see this symbol, which says that within the masculine, there is the feminine, and within the feminine, there is the masculine. And when you see the symbol, it's kind of static and flat, but what we need to understand, it is always dynamic. These energies of masculinity and femininity are always in a dynamic circulation within us and out into the world. So there are times with my children that I need to be quiet, reflected, and listening in activate more of my feminine energy. And there are other times when I'm going to give you that side eye that lets you know that that is not going to work any longer, and this thing needs to change.
Yeah.
And I need to, and we flip into those things at the appropriate time. So being aware of the energies and how they flow in us and how we can activate them to their greatest purpose when needed gives us an understanding of how we can apply that into the world for our brand. You and I were talking before the show. You can't do in the world what you haven't begun to work on within yourself. So these concepts of looking in the mirror and saying, how am I organized? Where are my what does my internal landscape look like? What are my masculine traits? What are my feminine traits? How do I toggle between them? How do they combine to kind of make me who I am?
Yeah. And I start to think about that internal work and the things that we do to work on ourselves, because for me, growing up in the 80s, it was very masculine, and women had to sort of tap into that masculine energy in a lot of ways in order to
big shoulder pads.
Yes.
Visually, women began to wear these suits with these really big, they almost look like football player with shoulder pads on. Almost an exaggerated sense of trying to step into this new role. It's a huge cultural moment. Yeah.
We'll even think about our hair if you want to, like it's, it was big and it was like bold and like, I'm here, pay attention to me, type of energy as well.
And when I was in the mirror experience of that for my generation was the 60s and 70s, where men, I used to have hair down below my shoulders. So that was the other part of that experience, right? Was while women were, stepping into more of the masculine, men were being encouraged to step more into the feminine expression of their self. So it was a very dynamic, we're still in the midst of a very, very dynamic, world of gender dynamics. Yeah.
Well, I even think about the rock stars, like all the rock stars had the longer hair and they were exploring makeup and all of these types of things to, demonstrate or put like a different face on themselves. But you're right. I didn't think about that, but they were still had that masculine energy as well.
The girls still wanted them, right? They were still, throwing things on stage at them. So but it's very dynamic, and this is one of the things that we need to be aware of. It's it's not a set it and quit it kind of thing for your brand. You need to be a student of culture. You need to be a student of these kind of the anthropology, the sociology, the psychology of what's going on in the culture, and you need to be able to kind of ride the wave, because you can go too far. For example, I don't think that the Marlboro Man, except for a very specific kind of product, would be a good archetype to activate now, because that was an archetype that was a product of its time. And 2025 is not that time. And similarly, there are other more feminine kinds of activated brands that, wouldn't be activated today. So we need to be students of culture, and we need to adapt as culture changes. And there's a penalty for not being aware of it. We have seen some very meaningful brands step into some very big problems by thinking that these gender associations, these archetypal associations that their brands had, by thinking they were just kind of superficial attachments. Oh, they won't care if we pull that thing away from them. They won't care if we do that to their deeply ancient associations, right? These masculine and feminine archetypes are ancient in us. They occur at the level of our limbic system, pre-verbal, pre-conscious, at our grunt level of reaction. And when men have very strong associations with product, and women have very strong associations with product where the gender has been strongly activated. And if you pull that away from them, and just go, okay, we changed our minds, you need to be prepared for the backlash. These are ancient. These are not, we think about these as recent developments. These are ancient associations that humans have with their nature, their energetic nature.
Yeah, I want to dive into this. I do want to say hello to a couple of people. Tammy is joining us from Facebook. Thank you, Tammy, for joining us. We also have Abbas joining us as well. Give me a second. Here we go. Oh, Abbas, good morning to you. So glad to see you. We also have Bryce saying good morning, a bit late, but excited for today's conversation. Jennifer was just also laughing about the shoulder pads, the visual of that. And it was a type of armor. And she said, I miss those shoulder pads.
And the big hair was, the hair was as big as the shoulders were.
Exactly. So, you started to go into this, but in your experience, are there industries that respond mostly from a predominantly masculine brand archetype? And then are there others from a feminine one? And we mentioned a couple of them already.
Yeah, I think from my own personal, portfolio of case studies, construction is something that I've had a lot of experience in. And, probably one of my favorite brands was Hanson Brick. And we did a lot of really powerful breakthrough branding for them. It doesn't get more masculine than men building brick houses, right? Strong, sweaty, in the sun, labor, construction, rational architecture, all of the right angles and all that. Very, very, very masculine. But that was one of the things that we used to activate gender and the more feminine energy. What we did was we disrupted it. It's such a masculine thing that it would be easy to have men doing masculine activities. But what we did was we identified that the woman was the decision maker on who was going to choose the brick for that house. So we activated women and femininity, and we had brick as a fashion choice because the woman was going to make that choice, and we showed brick as a pair of glasses. We made them like fashion accessories. So brick became glasses, brick became a purse, brick became a belt, and we had some very attractive women in our ads with these brick. We had some men as well, but wearing these brick like they were an Yves Saint Laurent gown with a brick belt. And do you think that men responded to the image of really feminized, imagery in the context that disrupted this masculine association? Wow, you brought women into this masculine, you brought this femininity into this masculine thing, and that disrupted the pattern. So yes, there are many, many masculine brands. And one little trick, one little hack to consider is, how can I flip that? How can I break the pattern of the typical associations that people show for masculinity? How can I flip that, disrupt the pattern and the script, and people becomes memorable? It was a very effective campaign when we flipped it on its head.
Yeah, I remember that one specifically. I remember the guy with the brick on his face, and then you had the brick as the purse. And I knew whenever I pulled you into this particular topic that you were going to be a great combination because you are able to pull into each of those energies. That's just something that I've always sensed about you just in general. I didn't realize how perfect you were going to be for this topic until we really started to get into this. And I started thinking about that as I was developing some of the questions and some of the things we were going to talk about. I was thinking about that particular ad from the past.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so maybe also, can you share an example of a brand that successfully shifted and played to the opposite gender? I know with that one, but maybe even some that haven't done so well that maybe you weren't involved with, but the impact that it had on audience perception.
Yeah. So this will I want to use examples that speak to all the audience, including folks, who've been in the business for a long time. And I think that Apple is a really good example of that. We can go way back on Apple, but let's just kind of go back to the 80s where they activated a very masculine, they were operating in a very masculine kind of mode. It was Apple versus PC. Remember that?
Yep.
It was poking at you. It was assertive. It was jokey, poke you in the ribs. Oh, you're not as good as we are. Very masculine kind of comparative, analytical kind of stuff. But then what did we see? We started introducing more feminine shapes in the form factors, and we started to activate creativity and thinking differently and more of these feminine kinds of attributes. And it became warmer and softer, but it didn't abandon all of that technical stuff. It just enriched it from a rational reason to buy to a rational reason that empowers these emotional drivers that have lots of rich associations with form and curve and beauty and aesthetic, combined with performance, speed, durability, all of those things, business applicability, all of those rational things. One of the things I've been thinking about lately in client discussions, and it does kind of map to the energies. We talk about the masculine and the feminine. There are other ways of kind of visualizing this. It can be more of the emotional versus the rational. Those also have kind of polar kinds of things that we find. Men tend to lean more on the rational. Women tend to lean a little bit more on the emotional. And I think that an interesting analog is Play-Doh as emotion and Lego as rational. That the Play-Doh, you can shape it into anything you want. It's completely malleable, right? And you can take free form. But the rational is the Lego, and it snaps together. Everything snaps together. So we have some Lego brands, right, that are highly, highly rational, business systems, all of those things. Then we have more Play-Doh brands that are about emotion and it's fashion and it plays into those kinds of things. So just being aware that you need something of both, that you counsel your clients through some very technical kinds of use case scenarios where precision and replicability and accuracy and all of that is critically important, those kind of more masculine kinds of things. But when you arrive with a servant kind of heart, and when you arrive with collaboration and you arrive with emotional fluency that not only says, let's deal with this problem, but I'm feeling like you're a little bit sad right now. Right? That willingness to take a left. So your ability to combine your Lego with that Play-Doh kind of thing is another way to maybe visualize how to think about this instead of just masculine and feminine. It's a complex, very nuanced kind of world.
It is. And even whenever I think about like the different functions within a business, and you think about the journey that people take with a business. So that first person, and they always talked about this, and I think that's why they always put a female as the receptionist. But nowadays we don't always have that front person at, in a building. We're a virtual company, we're remote. And so the first person that they meet with is Kate for the most part in a lot of ways. And Kate has this big tattoo, on the back of her head. She's bald, like in a lot of ways has that masculine, feeling whenever you first see her, but then she has the most feminine traits that come out with like, how are you doing? Like the nurturing side of the house. So you think about like the energy or even the things that of how people interact with even people, and how it is that through the journey of things, there's certain times that they want that more masculine energy of, all right, what are we trying to accomplish? Here's the task. Now let's get into action. But I also think about the things that we also do to be able to have fun, which is playing into the emotional side of the situation as well. So even just our interactions, play into both of these in addition to that also being your brand, because a lot of times people only look at brand as the color.
That's right. I think you've put your finger on a very important component of brand, which is the experience that people have of your brand. And that initial experience when you are onboarding a client, you are transitioning from their perception of you versus your digital brand presence and your footprint on social media and all that kind of stuff. This is that on-ramp moment. And that is going to be their most grounded and anchored experience. And if you optimize that moment for the kind of brand nuance that you want to anchor their memory and association to you as a brand, then you cast and stage that on board as a production, right? It's like, we're doing a performance here that is going to frame our company, it's going to frame our value and prepare your expectations for what it's going to be like to work with us going forward. So being really sensitive to what that experience feels like. Are we just going to get straight to business?
Right.
Or are we going to kind of get to know you, your context, your dreams, your hopes, kind of activate some of those emotional things and know that people like to bond more deeply, but kind of opening up the door. Now, meanwhile, there are other companies and other brands who their nature. One of my clients was Candid Partners, is a IT consultancy that recently, a couple of years ago, sold to McKinsey. And we named them Candid because that was the owner's personality.
Mm-hmm.
John and Merrick, the founders, very straightforward men, very traditionally straight to the business. We don't mess around, and we're going to give it to you straight. Sometimes you will not like what we have to say, but you can trust that if we make our recommendation, it is well considered and we think is for your best. That's Candid. So to try to soften that would have denied them the power of their authentic personality, which was rooted in a kind of a masculine, assertive, very direct communication style, which for you have a candidness about you as well, but you also have a broader, more fluid kind of nature. So I don't know that I would have narrowed it for you, but for them, it was perfect. It activated that masculine thing. Meanwhile, they had a lot of women who were very, very, wonderful at delivering the front lines of that service. So they added nuance to it, but they ran with their strength.
Yeah, I really like that. I'm going to pull up a comment from Nick. She says, that's a good question. And I think the answer is yes. I've worked in stone fabrication and the elevator industry and gone into the field a few times. At least half of the men were not happy seeing me in hard hat walking around. And so, it's interesting in the things that we experience. But I am seeing, continuing to see a shift, especially in the construction industry. For example, I know Jesse and Jen, who are part of the No BS tribe, and some of the things that a lot of individuals like Adam Hoots. So we start to look at like lean and some of the practices related to that. And it has to do with understanding people and understanding how it is that they influence the things that are happening. And so, even though I think construction is a really good example of a very masculine energy archetype, but I also think that they, as you and I think talked about, in some industries, you have to be careful about going too far the other way as well. Like they need a little bit more of that feminine presence because they're dealing with suicide rates that are so high that it's not healthy for individuals within that particular industry. But you also can't tap so far to that other side that you start to alienate and people, are like, well, the whole reason I went into construction is for that feeling.
We have to honor. There are a couple of thoughts. We need to honor that men like being men, and that's good. Yeah. And we need to honor that women like being feminine when they do, and that's good. And any combination of those things is part of this ongoing kind of swirl of change that is always present. And I would also say that because change is always happening, the Taoists say the only thing that doesn't change is change itself. That's the only thing we can count on is change. And as these industries change and in a primarily male-dominated environment, and a woman comes into it, I think we need to give each other some grace just at the level of neuroscience, that whenever a new something disruptive in your visual pattern comes in, you pay attention to it. A woman walking onto a construction site is a bright, shiny object because she disrupts the pattern of just a bunch of men wearing jeans and t-shirts and being sweaty. Okay. Now, I just saw a road crew of all Latinas. I had never seen that before, and it grabbed my attention. So if I were looking at them as I was driving by, kind of admiringly and interestingly, like, wow, that really was different, for them to think, why are you looking at me? Haven't you ever seen a woman before? It wasn't about that. I wasn't judging it. I wasn't saying that's a bad, I was just saying, I haven't seen that before. And so the things that I haven't seen before, I pay more attention to. So let's give each other a little bit of grace on both sides. That the worst interpretation is they didn't want me there. A more generous interpretation would be, they're not used to seeing me there. And so I was a bright, shiny object. And as more of us arrive, the more used to it they will become, and they have become. I'm sure you've seen in your business that used to be primarily male dominated, that the emergence of women in there, it's nothing that anyone even comments about. But 15, 20 years ago, it would have been a regular thing to comment about, right?
Yeah. It's interesting. I think you hit upon something as well, is that sometimes people don't mind being the disruptor in things. And I'm curious, I feel like that's more of like a masculine energy, where people that want to remain more the safe route would be more feminine. For me, I don't mind being a disruptor to things. So I do think that for me, I tap into a lot of masculine energy. And Kate and I talked about this early on, because we talked about this topic, early on when we started things. And when we started to evaluate ourselves, like we thought we were going to be masculine, like it was going to show up that we're masculine energy. But when we did like this test, we were both feminine, and we were like, what? Like we were surprised because we just felt more masculine in a lot of ways. But
it's relative. I mean, you are relatively more masculine than more feminine, but you still, to me, you read, you read as very much Sarah the woman to me, who also has that other dimension that you can go into, and that's part of the richness and interestingness of you. And I think that's part of the bigger takeaway here as it relates to brands, is to, as an exercise, begin within yourself and see kind of the nature and the landscape of your energies within you, and then kind of say, okay, now that I see that, let me look at some brands and maybe see how Apple did that, and how Harley Davidson took a brand that was rebellious and all masculine. Now all of a sudden they've come up with their e-models, and they've come up with other things that have opened the door and invited women in, and how brands are really playing that way so that you have some references, and then turn to your brand and say, okay, where are we? And sometimes you need help. I often tell clients, you don't try to cut your own hair, because you can't see yourself like someone else can see you. So you often need to bring a third party perspective into it to help you see your company, objectively. But to the extent that you can, and you can workshop it with, your own team members, do that exercise for yourself and kind of put the columns. Here are our rational, here are our emotive, here are our masculine, more feminine, and kind of see how they lay out, and what might be one you might want to push up, and what might you want to push down a little bit, and just make it more interesting.
Yeah. Early on, before the show, we talked about some companies that made a little bit of faux pas in not really representing or honoring their brand. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I'm decidedly apolitical these days. All of my friends out there who knew me in a previous life where I was much more vocal, I've taken off my jersey. Okay, so all of the comments that I'm going to say come from kind of an agnostic, dispassionate, to the best of my ability, objective, professional branding lens. I'm not making judgment on the cultural wars here. Okay. Yep. There were several instances. The most recent one where I think a brand really stepped into it was Jaguar. I think Jaguar has previously had done a wonderful job of balancing their energies in their brand. On one hand, you have your icon is a pouncing, jaguar. It's about to attack or eat or capture something, very aggressive, very masculine. But it's embodied in a very elegant, beautiful, sensuously designed car. Yeah. So it combined the lethality, the aggressiveness with that beautiful feminine silhouette. And that was a very, very rich thing. And then they came out with this campaign that wanted to be everything to everyone, and it ended up tanking them because they abandoned that core association and they just kind of played 52 card pickup with their brand. People are very deeply rooted to your brands, my friends. Do not play with their hearts frivolously. The reaction that the men had to Bud Light was a reflection of their attachment to what the brand had represented in their history as a man and as a product that they associated with socializing with other men. It was their archetype. They were very, very bound to that. And to play with it, oh, won't it be cool? We'll get more, we'll get some, yes, you got attention. Yep. But at what price? So I think it's just, we need to pay attention and honor the depth of the relationships that people have with our brands, even if some of those relationships may be slightly outdated. And even if we think we need to update those and do those, I recommend that we do that in a ramped fashion rather than a left turn into it. There are other examples, but those are the ones that jump out at me immediately. And I would just, the other thing that I would, in another way, I think Cracker Barrel is a recent, in a different way. It was less about gender and energy. It was more about kind of conservative, old preservation of the old versus, innovating the new. You and I talked before the meeting, and I want to say this very respectfully to all of the branding and marketing leaders out there. This is a very important point of view to me philosophically. As a branding leader, as a branding consultant, I am not here to change culture. I am here to serve my clients. I'm here to make them more profitable and to come up with strategies and campaigns that enhance their perception and their profitability in the market. And at the point that I begin to elevate my personal ambitions for cultural change and how I think the world should organize itself, I am inverting my responsibility as a professional. My first responsibility is to serve my client's success. And if in the course of doing that, we happen to create cultural change, all the better for us. It just makes us better. But I wanted to put that out there. It's kind of a personal philosophical thing that I think we've often got a little bit confused, and a lot of the faux pas that we've seen have been when people have prioritized their own personal ambition over service for the brand.
I agree. I mean, I think anyone that understands anything about marketing, 101 is about your audience. And the last thing you want to do is alienate the people that are resonating with your brand. And also understanding, I think, one of the things that I think is also important is, whether it's about yourself or whether it's about your brand, it's about being authentic to what it is that you have become, and the perception of, understanding the perception that people have. And I know that sometimes they, are looking at, well, we want to change that perception. Okay. But you have to also honor what it is that energy that is given already intuitively being given off about your brand and what it is that people are finding about your brand that is attractive, that you also have to honor as well. So I love what your point of making sure that, one, you're being authentic to who you are as a brand, but also not looking at it in a I want to change it because I culturally want things to change.
Yeah.
It's not serving what's best for the client and for the brand and for the audience that has built this connection.
And your
Because
shareholders.
yeah,
Your shareholders care a lot about consumer loyalty, and they care a lot about these disruptive things that we do. Sometimes I think it can get really abstracted when we talk at the level of brand. It seems like this is very abstracted, and I find it helpful sometimes just to reduce it to the level of our human individuality. Let's think about a brand as a relationship between two people. And, if you're in a marriage or some kind of relationship, you are in that relationship and you have a sense of who that person is and what they represent, right? And if that person showed up one fine day wearing a completely different hairstyle, a completely different set of clothes, talking a different kind of talk than you were used to, you would go, wait a minute, is this who I got into a relationship with? And who is this person? And why have you changed so radically? Why have you gone from this beautiful performance athletic car brand to being this slightly bizarre, I don't know what you are. Are you a fashion brand now? Are you a cultural, what are you? I wanted to buy a car. And kind of making that left turn, when you think about making a left turn out of a relationship with a human, it's like, I thought you were this, and now you're showing up like that. It's disruptive. It's unsettling. And when we kind of reduce it to how I would feel if that happened to me as an individual, maybe we can be a little bit more empathetic about how, the broader, consumers are going to feel.
Yeah. So we're talking about disruption, and one of the biggest disruptions is AI. And you recently wrote a blog. It was the 4 brand archetypes that will survive the AI wave. And you stated that brands that survive AI disruption won't be those that compete with machines, but they'll be those that remind us why humans matter. And so what are the traits that we need to rely upon more to interject that human subtlety in our brand? And I'd then love to discuss what gender energy that sort of falls into.
Yeah. I think, we, at QV, we champion humans, and it's not just window dressing. I'm seeing the sea of sameness that's beginning to emerge in brand copy, videos. I mean, it is becoming ubiquitous. You go to YouTube and it feels like every 5th video, it has a AI voiceover.
Yep.
And AI assembled video. And a lot of companies are just trying to do this highly automated, let's just throw a gajillion things out there, get as many impressions. And they're taking this very quantitative approach to brand. Let's just throw as much stuff as we can and try to win the war of numbers.
Yep.
And ignoring the qualitative part of this. And the people who get in the qualitative are the ones that are going to win. That numbers game, you can't win that. It's always escalating. It's always escalating. But the qualitative thing is the human thing is what is irreplaceable so far, and what I would hang on for right now. Love him or hate him, Elon Musk cannot be, his voice and what he represents for Tesla and X and his portfolio of companies is irreplaceable. Just think of the energy, the flawed, broken, chaotic, wonderful, earth-shifting, paradigm-changing, all of that humanness, that rich humanness, AI can't touch. It can't activate that, oh my God, kind of quality. And we have a lot of leaders who, if they make themselves present in their brand, particularly, as I said, with video, you in particular, Sarah, you in particular are going to activate your brand in the most powerful way by being who you are and speaking to who you are with as much video as you can do. And I really want to encourage leadership who has often thought they could kind of stay locked away and not have to put themselves on the front line of representing their brand and articulating and voicing that brand to the public. That's going to be one of the greatest strengths of great brands moving forward, are people who are able to humanize them and be imperfect and speak extemporaneously and not have everything scripted and just show up as a human that can bond with other humans. That's still the basis of all of this, is that human bonding with one another. We aren't selling business to business. We are selling people to people in a business context.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with that more. I also do see the the non-quality continuing to make its impact on society. And I keep saying to myself, stick with the quality, of the things, the nuanced conversations, because eventually that people will get so tired of the other that they'll be craving and seeking the quality aspect of things. And I think that for me, that's what I keep trying to remind myself, is that all of this noise that is making a huge impact from a content perspective, it's frustrating whenever you're really focused on like quality and having deeper conversations, but you see all of this, the things that are making headways are the things that really don't provide that quality, deeper conversation.
Yeah. The technology doesn't have a heart. Humans have heart. And, if you just rely on automation, you're going to leave people feeling cold. And for the time being, I think a hybrid model, the other thing I want to say while we have them, to our marketing leaders and branding executives, don't get married to this AI is going to let me reduce all of my head count and save all the money that we used to have to spend on consultants and agencies and stuff. It's just not there yet. I work with it every day, and I have to rework it and rework it and rework it all the time. It's just not there. The automation is not there. The thinking and the nuance is not there. It's a great thought starter. Does a great job at first pass and sometimes second pass analysis and organizing and collating and things like that, so that you can move in a structured way through a lot of complex information. But we need humans at the center of branding. We need humans at the center of marketing, and there is no replacing us now. So inject that human magic that you're talking about. Own it, believe in it. Believe in it. People are going to get tired of all the fake stuff. They're going to get tired of all the the automation, and they're going to want to have a human experience.
Yeah. I'd like to shift maybe to the personal side of things. And you talked about how it's important that you understand yourself first. And so how have you navigated the tension between these two energies within yourself? And especially when external expectations have maybe pushed us strongly towards one side or the other?
Yeah. It's been a dance all of my life. I came into the world probably pretty creative. I've been a singer and an artist, all of my life. Spent 30 years in the music industry as a singer, writer, composer, producer. That is that reflection of my Plato nature, right? That free form, malleable, more creative. The creative is a very, just by virtue of women create life, right? Birth babies, it's a very creative, feminine is very creative. And so The feminine was very alive in me in that creativity. But I found as I needed to monetize my creativity, that just showing up as the creative guy who came up with cool ideas was not going to get me where I needed to be from a business standpoint. And so I had to activate, more of that kind of rational, discipline, functional process, systems kind of thinking. I had to cultivate. I had to be very intentional about cultivating that side of myself so that I had more balance, so that I could walk into a creative assignment and compel someone to give me a big budget because they trusted that I could run the project, that I could hit the numbers and make the dates and all that. It wasn't just about being really cool and creative. It was about being able to marry those things. And until I was able to do that, I really wasn't that effective. And I've seen people who do that from the opposite side. They come in highly, highly right-brained, or highly left-brained and organized and rational and all that kind of stuff. But their ideas are dry. Their ideas are uninspiring. They don't turn people on. And so part of that exercise is to, loosen up the feminine and tap more into that feminine and give yourself permission to be creative, to try things that you may not have tried, to improvise in ways that you hadn't. So that was part of my journey, just in business. And then as I became a father and was a husband, I had to shift into a different kind of thing. I will say from my generation, I'm still pretty much a product of my parents who were born in the 1920s. Okay, that was a very different time, a very different way that culture saw roles, and I was a byproduct of that. So coming into my marriage and my role, that was a very part of the archetype that I had. And I had to learn how to not just be dad. I had to learn how to also kind of become a bit more expansive emotionally and a little bit more nuanced. Fortunately, I had that artistic creative bag to draw from. But yeah, it's been an ongoing dance. And as I find myself even getting older and my kids are out of the house and I'm no longer married, how do I kind of balance those things now, and what needs to come up and what needs to recede? And it's an interesting exercise.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I want to end today with a particular question about the future. And so looking ahead, in what ways do you hope to evolve your own blend of masculine and feminine qualities personally and then also professionally?
Yeah, a lot of this is beyond words. This existence that we have is fairly inexplicable. So I won't deign to try to explain exactly what's going on within me and what I will become. I generally hope my general goal in life is to grow in understanding and love. And to whatever extent my balance of energies helps me interact with people more compassionately, more gracefully, more effectively. However, my energies need to organize themselves to make me as present and available to achieve that goal of being the best person I can be in the world by showing up how my nature wants to show up and allowing it to evolve and not trying to get in the way of myself or gatekeep myself. We'll see. I just want to be the best human I can be and the most effective expression of what I was put here to do. That's and to whatever balance I strike, we'll see.
Yeah, I love that. And one of the things that I've really focused on is focusing less on balance and more about flow. Like, what is needed in this moment? Is it that calling upon that masculine energy of boundaries or action or things like that? Or is it, I need to take some time to listen and nurture and have more understanding? So for me, I think it's been really enlightening to explore the masculine and feminine energies for people. And what I want for everyone is to be able to encourage them to understand how to activate both of those in them. And then also understanding when you are in the power side of these, that's when you make the most progress in being your authentic self. It's when you're in the shadow side, so the controlling, the dominance, or the passive, and you need to take a little bit more action oriented. So it's understanding when we're in our shadow side that that's what's calling upon us to be able to ask ourselves, are we being our best version of ourselves in this moment? And we might need to draw upon that other energy to help us.
Yeah. And as one gets older, you begin to trust more in your essential nature and you don't try to control as much. A lot when I was younger, I tried to control and I white knuckled and I'm going to make this happen and I'll do this, my sheer determination and brute force, right? And I'm going to be more this way and I'm going to be more that way. And then as you get older, you kind of zoom out and you go, I wasn't in so much control. I thought I was in control, but there was a lot of things going on that I didn't control. And I've gotten to the point now where instead of gripping, I trust myself. I trust who I was that led myself to this moment in my life. Yeah. And I try to steer more delicately. I try to empower people more instead of controlling more. I try to give them more grace, more space, more opportunity. I'm still going to be there. We're not going to let this thing go off the road, but I don't have to do this. And talking about our masculine and our feminine energies is not about this. It's not about judgment. It's just about flow. I think that's the key. It's just flow with your nature.
Yeah, I love that. And it's a perfect way to end today's conversation. Rick, I just always enjoy talking with you. I could sit here for hours really and have a philosophical conversation with you. And I knew that you were going to be perfect for today's conversation. And I'm glad that we also brought in brands and perception and all of those things that people can help people to understand from a business perspective, how they can maneuver, as well as from a personal perspective, how they can be better in alignment with themselves. So thank you for today's conversation.
Well, the pleasure was all mine, Sarah. I really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for asking me to join you.
Absolutely. Well, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I also had another individual that joined. I just want to say hello. He said, hello, everyone from Thailand. So I think this is maybe the first time you have joined us, David Jones. So thank you so much for joining us. And I hope you guys have an amazing weekend. And next week, we're going to continue the conversation related to the law of gender, but we're going to be taking it in a little bit more of a sales business perspective in how those energies show up from a sales perspective in leading our teams. And so next week, I'm going to be having Paul Pierce join us with the great demo. And we should have an amazing conversation. So I encourage you to come back next week. And again, thank you again, Rick, for joining us. And everyone have an amazing Badass Friday and hope you go into the weekend with some calm and clearing out that clutter and finding those blue pops in the sky that help you really just tap into your flow and the things that you're wanting in life. And so thank you everyone for joining us.